Hey guys, it's Leah. Welcome back, or welcome if you are new, and welcome to my end of year TBR. We love a TBR video here, but one of my favourite ones to do every year is like in the middle of the year when I reflect on all of the books that I haven't read yet that I'm still dying to get to. There are obviously so many that I want to get to. I could genuinely do an end of year TBR that includes like 40 books, but today we have 15. We have some fantasies, we have some romances, we have some literary fiction. I am so excited for all of these. If you have read any of these books that I do mention, obviously as always, please let me know down below what you thought about them, which ones you think I should definitely prioritize, which ones you think I should get to first. I am definitely gonna have a hard time deciding which ones to get to, so any help would be very much appreciated. But we do have 15 today. Let's get straight into it. Let's start with some fantasy. Okay, so for fantasy we have 4 books that I'm going to prioritise getting to for various different reasons. Some of them I know I definitely want to film reading vlogs for. One of them is a new release, one of them is a proof that isn't even out yet, and one of them is a book that I have been dying to get to, so I'm definitely gonna read it. Starting with the one that I have been most excited to get to for so long, it's probably one of my most anticipated fantasy books that everyone raves about currently, or honestly more last year. I feel like everyone was talking about it. It is One Dark Window by Rachel Gillig. If you're not new here, you know that I absolutely adore everything gothic, whether it is in fantasy or horror or literary fiction. The gothic is my favourite thing in the entire world, and this is an incredibly popular fantasy duology, I believe, that is gothic. That is all I know about it. I think the magic system has something to do with cards, but I do really want to go into it knowing as little as possible. I just know that it is very beloved on BookTok, on Bookstagram, on booktube. I'm just so excited for it. I've also seen so many people adore the second book, not just the first one, so as far as I'm aware, people think it's a really strong fantasy duology, and I'm always going to be in the mood for that, so I'm undoubtedly reading it this year. I feel like I've been purposely trying to put it off for autumn just to match the vibe slightly. I am so excited for this one. Next we have a fantasy book that has been on my TBR for years, but I have been, when I tell you, I'm definitely terrified to start this trilogy. I know so many people say it is like their favourite trilogy of all time, and I am just terrified. Like, actually genuinely terrified. The intimidation is real. You couldn't guess already, that is The Poppy War by R.F. Kuang. I absolutely adore R.F. Kuang. I read everything she has released apart from the Poppy War trilogy, and for that, I feel like I'm gonna adore this. So many of my friends have loved this. One of my best friends absolutely adores it. She has been trying to convince me. Mayla, I'm so sorry. You have been trying to convince me for like a year now to actually read it. For this series, I definitely want to film a reading vlog where I read them all back to back with spoilers, with non-spoilers. If that is something that you definitely want to see, let me know. I have been planning this video all year. I really do want to do it, but let me know if it is something that you want to see. I am just so, I feel like I need to document my experience with this trilogy, whether it's because I think I'm absolutely going to adore it and I want to look back on the experience, or I know I'm going to be emotionally devastated. Like, I can imagine I'm going to be sobbing like a little bitch by the end. This again is one of my most anticipated fantasy books ever. I am so intimidated by it. All I know is that it has nods to real Chinese history, and for that I know it's going to be really heavy. I'm prepared to fall in love with the character and all of her unhingedness. I am just so excited for this, but equally this is one of the books I'm most terrified to read on my physical TBR. Next we have a fantasy book that has very recently been published. I am absolutely in love with this author's works, and that is Evocation by S.T. Gibson. Not only am I in love with this author's works, I am in love with every single thing to do with this book. Number one, the foiling. This is the Waterstones exclusive edition. It is the prettiest book I have ever seen in my entire life, and I hope the insides, I was going to say I hope the insides are the same. That sounds quite gothic. I hope the contents of this book is going to match the vibes. I am in love with S.T. Gibson's writing. I've absolutely adored An Education in Malice and A Dowry of Blood. They write such brilliant character studies in terms of queerness and the gothic and polyamory. Equally always write so brilliantly in such an eerie and atmospheric sense. This is one that I'm definitely going to read more towards autumn. I am so excited. I honestly haven't had anyone talk about this too. I haven't seen that many reviews of it, so I don't know what the general consensus is, but I am expecting to love it. I'm very excited for this one. And then last but certainly not least, for the fantasy genre, we have a book that is being published in September, or more so republished. It was indie published to begin with. It has now been traditionally picked up, and that is Fear the Flames by Olivia Rose Darling. All I know about this is that it is romantasy. It has dragons. So many people absolutely adore it, and I really hope that I am too. Oh my god guys, the lighting today, when I tell you that summer we had one day of sun in the UK, and ever since now it has been non-stop raining for the past couple of days. So I'm really sorry if it goes dark and then light again. what can I do? The Flames I've been so incredibly looking forward to. My fantasy dragon era is currently rife because of House of the Dragon. Like, I need these vibes desperately. It absolutely will not surprise me if I do end up reading it in the upcoming weeks. I cannot wait for this. If you've read it, again, please let me know. Okay, now that we've done fantasy, let's do some romance and then literary fiction, because as expected, nobody's surprised, literary fiction is my biggest genre. So the romances that I want to get to, we again have 4. I have now read the majority of my romances on my physical TBR. I really do not have that many anymore, which is a double-edged sword. One, because when I'm in the mood for a romance, I literally don't really have any, so I really have to like choose from a limited selection, but equally that is blissful. It means that I've read the majority of my romance physical TBR, which fills me with so much joy because I can't say that for other genres, but we do have 4 I literally am so excited about. Take a shot every time I say I'm excited, you would be paralytic. To begin with, the one that I'm probably the most excited about is Part of Your World by Abby Jimenez. I have said so many times recently how excited I am to finally get into Abby Jimenez's works. Obviously this, I believe, is the best place to start. It's the start of the series. I've just heard the most incredible things about her novels and how they are quite similar to Emily Henry. My favourite romances are always quite Emily Henry-esque. Ones that very much dip their feet into a literary vibe, obviously have a romance but have so much more depth in terms of character analysis or grief. I absolutely adore romances like that, and I have heard Abby Jimenez is an incredible author for that, so I need to find another adjective for excited. I cannot wait. This is one of the ones that I'm definitely going to be reading. Hopefully, well, it's on my July TBR, so I should hopefully be getting to it this month. I feel like I'm going to binge read all of her books once I have finished this one. Another one that has been on my radar for years that I did start, but it wasn't really the right time. It wasn't hitting, but I do want to make sure I do read it before the end of the year. It is 7 Days in June by Tia Williams. Another one that so many people have recommended to me. I feel like I'm going to absolutely love it. Absolutely a 5-star prediction. All I know about this literally is that it is a romance. Some people cry at the end, some people are quite emotionally devastated by the end, and that like it discusses writing and publishing. That is all I need to know when I tell you that this is one of the romances that I've been dying to read for years. I'm not going to say I'm excited, but just know that I am. A romance author who I absolutely love, and this is the last book that I own from them physically, it is The Wall of Winnipeg and Me by Marina Zapata. This one I think is actually on my 24 books to read in 2024 list, so I do need to make sure that I actually get to it. I have been doing quite a good job, if I do say so myself, ticking off this list this year. In 2023, when it came to the 23 books that I wanted to read, I think I very much just lost track of it and didn't really complete it, but 2024 I've been prioritizing all of the books on there. As we've established in this video, I love a TBR video. You bet the second that January or December hits, oh my god, 25 books to read in 2025. Picking out books that I need to make sure I read throughout an entire year, like having a yearly TBR is so satisfying to me. I am so excited. For that, I want to make sure that I complete the 24 first. I absolutely adore Marina Zapata and her writing so much. From her, I have read All Roads Lead Here and From Luke with Love. I read All Roads Lead Here last, I think, December. I read it in the winter and it was the perfect, like, my favourite romance book of all time. The vibes are always so incredible in her novels. She writes slow burn so brilliantly. She is the best romance author, in my opinion, for a slow burn. This one's another one that I'm definitely going to get to soon because I have kind of been craving a contemporary romance. I think this is also a sports romance, and I haven't read too many of those. Finally, for romance, we have an author who I have yet to read from before. This is another one that has been on my radar because everyone was raving about it last year. I actually met the author last month for an event I was working, and she was so lovely, so funny. Honestly, the second that the event was over, I was like, I need to get your book. Like, I need to read it right now. And that is Out on a Limb by Hannah Bonham Young. I know so many people have read this, so many people have absolutely adored it, and I am so... I cannot wait. I really don't know too much about this at all other than what was mentioned at the event. I kind of was purposefully trying to avoid spoilers, but hearing about Hannah's experience writing this, it was so heartfelt and raw. It has own voices disability representation, which we don't see a lot in general, let alone in a popular romance. For that, I absolutely cannot wait to read it. I am always trying to actively look for books that discuss disability representation. As a chronic illness girly, we need more disability representation in books, and seeing a actual own voices, physical disability representation in a popular romance book fills me with such joy. On top of that, as if that isn't enough, so many people have just said it's so well crafted in terms of its romance and just as a novel in general. So many people absolutely adore it. I am going to read this, another one that I'm going to read so soon. And then last but certainly not least, we have my literary fiction stack, which is the one that has the most. I love it. And for literary fiction, we have 7 books that I cannot wait to get to. We very much have an array of modern classics, books that are extremely underrated, new releases, ones that have been on my TBR for so long. Start with the one on top, which is a new release and one that I have seen nobody talking about. I very much discovered it myself just scouring Fitzcarraldo's website, and it is The Book of All Loves by Agustin Fernandez Marlowe. In terms of the novels that I just adore, and especially literary fiction / horror, I love post-apocalyptic stories. I grew up on The Walking Dead, I grew up playing The Last of Us, post-apocalyptic stories, and just the way that like humanity and that narrative exists in an art form and media absolutely fascinates me, and I am always looking for more. As I said, I found this after scouring Fitzcarraldo's website because It Lasts Forever and Then It's Over by Anne DeMarkin is a post-apocalyptic story, my favourite book of the year so far, and I need to find more. Like, I am an addict when it comes to post-apocalyptic stories. If anyone has any recommendations, oh my god, please send them my way. But this one sounds absolutely phenomenal. On the back it says, in the wake of the Great Blackout, faced with the near extinction of humanity, a pair of lovers speak to each other. They pass with precision and familiarity the endless aspects of their love. Out of their dialogues, piece by piece, a composite image of love takes form, one that moves outwards beyond the realm of relationships and into metaphysics, geology, linguistics, AI. I'm just so intrigued about what this narrative is going to teach me and give me. I am so excited. Like, post-apocalyptic fiction beats everything else for me. Absolutely one of the ones on my fiction TBR that I'm most excited for currently. Okay, then we have 2 modern classics. One of them, or both of them really, but this one in particular, I have had, when I tell you, on my TBR for years. This is a book that I have said I have wanted to read every single year since I first discovered it, and probably since I could first actually comprehend literature. Still haven't gotten to it because I'm 1, so intimidated, 2, I feel like it's going to become one of my new favourite books of all time, and for that I'm terrified. And that is 100 Years of Solitude by Gabriel Garcia Marquez. I have heard the best things in the entire world about this book. I've heard he is the father of magical realism. I absolutely adore magical realism. Just, I feel like this book is going to become one of my favourites of all time, and it scares me to my core. I'm so hyper aware when it comes to books like this, and that I'm 99% sure will be favourites, that I can only read them for the first time once, and I want to make sure that that experience is perfect. I'm aware that it's never going to be perfect. I'm aware that there is never a right time, and you should absolutely just pick up the books that you feel like you're going to fall in love with, but I'm so hyper aware that I can only do it for the first time once, and I feel that with this book like nothing else. I just finally need to read it. I don't feel like it's a book that I'm going to read quickly. I feel like it's one that I just need to start and hope that I finish before the end of the year. I literally cannot wait. I feel like if there's one book on my physical TBR that I'm most confident that is going to become a favourite, or like absolutely a 6 out of 5 star read, it would be this one. And then the other modern classic that we have is of course a Shirley Jackson. This one is The Sundial. The only reason that I've gone for The Sundial over many other of her works is because it's the only other one that I currently own physically. I love Shirley Jackson with everything in me. She is absolutely one of my favourite authors. The Haunting of Hill House and We Have Always Lived in a Castle are 2 books that I wholeheartedly just adore and I think about all the time. I do need to do a reread of them. It has been so long since I have read them, but I want to make sure that I read her entire backlist, and the next one is definitely going to be The Sundial. I know absolutely nothing about this, and I very much want to keep it that way. I feel like Shirley Jackson does such an incredible job of leaving you absolutely floored and reeling, and just completely leaving you isolated to comprehend what is happening in her works. She writes about the Gothic so brilliantly. Writing is always just so brilliant and eloquent, and the way that her characters haunt a narrative is so inspirational for me. I can only dream to write in that field. Like, oh my god, it would, that's the goal, like, honestly. I adore Shirley Jackson. The next one that I'm going to read from her is The Sundial. I am again probably going to wait till like October for this one. A literary book that I've had on my TBR again for years and has been on every single TBR ever is Cursed Bread by Sophie Mackintosh. I really don't know too much about this one again, other than I think it is slightly dystopian, a bit of a fever dream of a novel, which again is my favourite thing in the world. On the back it says it's gothic. It was also longlisted for the Women's Prize for Fiction last year. I've had so many people recommend me Sophie Mackintosh's work. First time that I ever came across her was she did the introduction for I Who Have Never Known Men, and again, one of my favourite books. And I remember reading the introduction after I had read I Who Have Never Known Men, and I was like, damn, any single author who does an introduction for this book, I'm gonna love. Like, there's no doubt in my mind that she is not gonna become a favorite or a 5-star author for me. I want to read all of her books. This is definitely going to be the place to start. I know it includes Ghosts, one of my favorite narratives again. I'm so excited for this one. Incredibly different to every other book that I've already spoken about is a new release, and that is Hard Copy by Fien Feldman. All I know about this is that this is very much in the likes of Melissa Broder in terms of its very unhinged feminine vibe. All I know about this book is that our protagonist basically like falls in love or has an infatuation with her office printer. Like, I'm imagining she's gonna have a relationship with her office printer. That is all I know. That is all I want to know before I go into it. I've heard it's strange. I'm always down for strange fiction. Another new release that again is very different to all of the other ones that I've mentioned is The Ministry of Time by Kayleen Bradley. I want to read this so bad because so many people have said such praise for it this year. I feel like this is going to be on so many people's favourite books of 2024 list. I feel like it has potential to win the Goodreads Awards, and I just cannot wait. I'm so fascinated by it. I know it is like a time travel sci-fi book that also includes a little bit of romance. If I'm being honest, I didn't really know which section to keep it in this video, but I feel like literary falls probably most accurate. I just really don't know anything about it. All I've seen is really positive reviews. I'm going to be going into this incredibly blind, which I'm so excited for. But yeah, I'm just so fascinated by this. If you've read it and you also love it, please let me know. I feel like the majority of people who have fallen in love with it. I really hope that I do too. And then last but certainly not least, the last book that I want to make sure I do read before the end of the year is a TBR veteran. It's probably been on my TBR just as long as like 100 Years of Solitude. I wanted to read it in a reading vlog last year that I just didn't end up getting around to doing. I promised so many of you that I was going to read it last year and last autumn. I'm so sorry I didn't, but you bet. Honestly, I'm willing to bet so much on it. I am reading it this autumn. Like, I need to. Like, it just needs to be read at this point. And that is If We Were Villains by ML Rio. I have lost count of how many times I've said I am going to read this publicly and then proceeded not to read it. This is a dark academia novel. It's one of the most infamous dark academia novels. So many people compare this to The Secret History, which I adore. One of my favourite books. My initial intimidation for this came from the fact that so many people compared it to The Secret History and said that you only like one or the other. You very rarely like both. And on top of that, this is also extremely Shakespearean. I did really enjoy studying Shakespeare at school, but I don't know too much, or I've just forgotten a lot of Shakespeare. So I'm worried that I'm going to read this and I'm not going to gel with it, but I do really feel like I am going to love it, and I just need to get to it. I can't make excuses anymore. I also know that ML Rio is coming out with another book at the end of the year, which I have pre-ordered and I absolutely want to read, but I want to make sure that I've read this one first, obviously. I'm just so excited, intimidated, daunted. Every single conflicting adjective you can think of is how I feel about this book. I just finally need to get to it. As much as I do believe that I am going to read it this autumn, I might need some convincing, so please, above anything else, convince me to finally read this book, because God knows I need it. But If We Were Villains is the last book that I 100% need to get to by the end of the year. Those were all of the books that I need to read before the end of 2024. We have quite a stack. I feel like we've got good variety in terms of genres, in terms of new releases, ones that are extremely old, modern classics. We have a little bit of everything. As I already said, if you have read any of the books that I did mention in this video, please feel free to let me know how you thought about them, whether you liked them or you disliked them, which one you think I should get to first. Equally, let me know of any books that you definitely want to read before the end of the year, or if you watched until the very end of this video but you don't really know what to comment any book emoji. As always, if you did enjoy this video and you are not yet subscribed, I would really appreciate if you did stick around. We have a lot of fun over here. I have some really exciting videos planned for the rest of the year that I cannot wait to show you guys, so I would love to have you here. But yeah guys, thank you again as always for spending some time with me and for being here. I really hope you enjoyed, and I hope to see you again very soon in another video.